Welcome, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really interesting YouTube video. It's called Bhai Ajba Enye, All Vedic Physics on Acharya Agnivrat.
Which translates to something like, who says Lord Shri Ram was an ordinary man? And it brings in ideas from Vedic physics by Acharya Agnivrat.
Exactly. So we're going to explore the arguments in this video. The speaker feels very strongly that figures like Rama and Krishna were, well, definitely not ordinary.
Yeah, and we're looking at the transcript. The speaker kicks things off by explaining how distressed he was. He heard a scholar claim Rama was just a regular human being.
And he connects that view to what he sees as negative influences.
All right. He links it to, foreign ideas, things he considers irreligious, even anti-national sentiments. It really sets a strong tone from the outset.
Okay, so it's not just an academic debate for him. It touches on culture, faith.
Absolutely. It's clearly deeply personal and tied to a specific worldview. He feels this view diminishes these important figures.
So how does he start building his case? He goes back to the Ramayana itself.
It does. He brings up the classic story of the sage Narada visiting Valmiki. Valmiki asks Narada to describe an ideal man.
And Narada describes Rama.
Precisely. But the speaker emphasizes who Narada was. A great sage, a yogi, even Akashgami, someone who could travel through the sky.
So the idea is, if someone like that described Rama, his description carries immense weight. It's not just hearsay.
Exactly. It establishes Narada's credibility as someone with, let's say, profound insight. This also leads him to mention Patanjali's Yoga Sutras.
Ah, the Vibhuti Pada section, the part about spiritual powers.
Yeah. He notes that some traditions apparently don't accept that section, but he makes it clear he sides with those who revere figures like Patanjali, Vyasa, Udipa, Dayananda Saraswati.
Figures associated with deep spiritual knowledge and, well, potentially extraordinary abilities themselves.
Right. It's like he's saying, look, the tradition itself acknowledges these kinds of powers and insights, so why is it hard to believe Rama and Krishna were extraordinary?
It builds a framework where these things are possible, even expected, within that understanding.
Then he talks about encountering this criticism directly, people saying Rama and Krishna weren't even purna yogis, complete yogis.
He sounds genuinely shocked by that in the transcript.
He does. He finds it almost unbelievable that someone might think they're a more accomplished yogi than Rama or Krishna. Or even that someone might view Rishi Dayananda, who praised Krishna, as, well, foolish for doing so.
That really shows the level of reverence he holds. It seems almost like blasphemy to him.
It does seem that way. Then, to argue for Rama's extraordinary nature, he brings in something quite different.
What's that?
He mentions a book by an American professor. Apparently, this book claims Rama traveled in some kind of shining aerial vehicle all the way from Sri Lanka to Mansarovar.
Wow, okay, so bringing in external, potentially modern interpretations.
Sort of. And he speculates maybe older versions of the Mahabharata or Ramayana actually had details about things like aerial vehicles, maybe even interdimensional travel, but they've been lost or hidden.
That's quite a claim. It adds a sci-fi element, almost.
It does. It's a way to counter the ordinary man idea by suggesting, advanced capabilities, maybe lost technology.
But he doesn't solely rely on that, does he? He goes back to Narada's description.
No, he pivots back to the texts. He highlights the word samadhana that Narada used for Rama.
And what does that signify for him?
He explains it means someone who is always in a state of equanimity, of inner balance. Doesn't matter if they're meditating, fighting, or ruling a kingdom. It's a constant state of yogic awareness.
So focusing on the inner state, not just external feats, that's a powerful counterargument to being ordinary.
Very much so. It points to profound self-mastery. How can someone always in that state be considered just, average?
And what about Krishna? How does he argue for his extraordinary nature?
He points to the titles used for Krishna by Vyasa, the author of the Mahabharata. Titles like Yogeshwara,
Lord of Yoga.
right, and Achyuta, meaning infallible or unchanging, and Vishwajit, conqueror of the world.
Again, drawing on the authority of the text and the specific language used by a revered sage.
Exactly. He finds the idea that Krishna wasn't a complete yogi, given these titles from Vyasa himself, to be, well, he calls it shameful.
He further bolsters this by mentioning the origin of the Ramayana itself.
Yes, he states that Brahma, the creator god in the Hindu tradition, personally instructed Valmiki to write Rama's story.
So if the story was commissioned by Brahma, narrated by Narada, written by Valmiki,
Then how, he asks, can the central figure possibly be ordinary? He frames calling Rama ordinary as almost a sin, given this pedigree.
It elevates the Ramayana to a divinely inspired text, making its subject inherently significant.
And he adds more evidence. The reaction of other sages to Rama. He lists several: Haradwaja, Sarahanga, Sutikshna, Shabari, Agastya, Atri.
These are major figures in the epics.
Very respected figures. And the speaker emphasizes they were all eagerly waiting for Rama to arrive in the forest during his exile.
Implying Rama had a known spiritual significance even then.
That's the implication. He even shares anecdotes, like how Sarabanga and Shabari supposedly gave up their physical bodies, their lives purpose fulfilled, just after seeing Rama.
That suggests Rama's mere presence had transformative power.
A profound impact, yes, far beyond what you'd expect from an ordinary person, however virtuous.
And he loops back to Narada again, just stating simply that Rama had every good quality.
Yeah, reinforcing that image of the Maryada Purushottam, the ideal man, perfect in every way, almost superhumanly virtuous.
There was also that interesting clarification about different Krishnas.
Oh, right. He pointed out there are at least 3 prominent figures named Krishna. There's Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the sage.
The author of the Mahabharata.
Then Krishna, who is Arjuna, the Pandava prince. And finally, Krishna Vasudeva, the one Vyasa called Yogeshwara.
And he mentioned being confused by a picture.
Yes, someone sent him a picture labeled Shri Krishna Chandra shown worshipping, and he questioned which Krishna it was meant to be. His main point seemed to be the importance of addressing all these significant figures with proper respect.
Which connects to his broader concern, right?
Right.
About a general lack of respect.
Exactly. He laments what he sees as a neglect of figures like Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, and many ancient sages in today's society.
And he criticizes elevating one's own teacher while putting down others.
Yes, he calls that a major transgression. It feels like a big part of his motivation, this perceived erosion of respect for the tradition's foundational figures, including Rama and Krishna.
He seems to be saying, we need to respect all these great souls.
Precisely. He argues for a wider reverence. Then he tackles the skepticism head-on. He acknowledges that some people might not see Rama as divine per se, but they still respect him.
Okay, so acknowledging nuance.
A bit. But then he asks, should Hindus align with those who actively mock Rama? He suggests that belittling these figures could stem from ignorance, maybe conspiracy, arrogance, or even self-serving motives.
So it's a call for solidarity and reverence, even if theological views differ slightly.
That seems to be the underlying message. It's framed as protecting cultural heritage and identity.
He also uses the sheer timescale of Rama's memory as evidence.
Right, that's a fascinating point. He mentions different estimations for when Rama lived. One calculation, based on the Vayu Purana, puts it at 870,000 years ago. Another interpretation suggests even longer.
Millions of years, potentially.
Yeah, and his argument is, well, ordinary people aren't remembered for thousands, let alone hundreds of thousands or millions of years. The fact that Rama is remembered signifies he must have been extraordinary.
The longevity of his story itself becomes proof of his non-ordinary nature.
And he links diminishing these figures directly to national well-being. He argues it weakens the self-confidence of Indians and harms the nation.
Which leads him to describe Ramraja, Rama's reign.
Yes, the ideal kingdom. He cites Valmiki and Tulsidas, quoting that famous line from Kilsias about no one suffering from physical, divine, or material afflictions.
He lists all the things supposedly absent: war, inequality, poverty, disease.
Spiritual suffering, natural disasters, crime, even problems with wild animals. It sounds utopian.
A golden age, essentially.
Absolutely. Characterized by adherence to Vedic principles and, importantly, mutual love among people.
He stresses the ethical foundation too, right? Nonviolence.
Yes, he brings up Valmiki describing the absence of violence in Ayodhya, and he defines ahimsa, nonviolence, drawing from Satyarth Prakash as benevolence and love for all beings.
And contrast that with today.
Certainly, he laments the lack of love he sees now in families, relationships, and asks, how could Rama, presiding over such a loving and harmonious era, be considered ordinary?
The absence of disease, even among common people, is another point he makes.
Yes, suggesting a level of well-being far beyond our current experience. He also uses the example of Rama and his brothers.
Their famous brotherly love.
Compared to, modern conflicts over inheritance or power, it's another way to highlight Rama's exceptional character and influence.
Then the focus shifts slightly to Hanuman.
Right. His logic is, if Rama was extraordinary, then his close disciple Hanuman couldn't have been ordinary either.
And he cites specific examples for Hanuman.
Yes, the incident where Hanuman meets Rama and Lakshmana in disguise. Lakshmana apparently recognizes Hanuman's profound knowledge Vedas, grammar just from hearing him speak.
So highlighting Hanuman's intellect, not just his strength.
Exactly. Intellect, strength, celibacy, scholarship all point to Hanuman being exceptional.
What about Hanuman flying? That's often discussed.
He addresses that. He suggests, based on Valmiki, it might have involved both actual flight and traversing the sea. And then he brings in Vedic science concepts.
Like Udan Pran.
Yeah, the idea of controlling an upward life force to counteract gravity. He also mentions Kishkinda, the monkey kingdom, being described with golden gates, suggesting an advanced, prosperous civilization.
And the Pushpak Vimana, the aerial chariot, gets a mention too.
Briefly, yes. As further evidence of India's past, prosperity and power, Samriddhi, as he puts it, it all feeds into this picture of a highly advanced, spiritually potent past.
So these aren't just simple myths to him. They contain hints of lost knowledge or capabilities.
That seems to be his perspective. He then urges listeners to understand how ignorance, perhaps ignorance of this grand past, led to India's decline.
He shares a personal story too, doesn't he?
He does, about watching the Ramayana TV series when he was sick and being deeply affected by it. He says the point of studying scriptures isn't just admiration, it's about seeing our own flaws and working to overcome them.
That adds a personal, practical dimension to his arguments.
It makes it relatable, and then he makes this really strong concluding plea.
About respect.
Yes. He compares disrespecting these Mahapurushas, these great souls, to the great sin Mahapap of disrespecting one's own parents. He argues that enshrining Rama's ideals is essential for the country, for character, for humanity itself.
That's a powerful statement, tying respect for these figures directly to the well-being of society.
Very much so. He even mentions a song about Rama, imagining devotees like Bharata or Shabari singing it, expressing that deep longing to embody Rama's ideals.
He adds that even rishis, great sages, longed just to see Rama.
Right, reinforcing Rama's immense spiritual stature. And one final point, citing Rishi Dayananda again.
What was that?
Quoting Dayananda's commentary on the Yajurveda, stating that a ruler, a king, should be a yogi to govern properly, implying Rama, as the ideal king, must have been a yogi.
It all ties back to that inherent yogic, non-ordinary nature.
Exactly. He ends by simply asking listeners to listen to their inner voice and think about all this.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've really explored the speaker's perspective from that video transcript. A passionate case for why Rama and Krishna should be seen as far more than ordinary historical figures.
Yeah, he draws on everything. Scriptures, sage authorities, interpretations of history, even personal feeling to argue they're extraordinary beings, possibly divine, whose status is crucial.
He clearly believes that understanding and respecting them is fundamental to cultural identity and perhaps even national strength. He sees questioning their stature as potentially harmful.
Definitely. His view is rooted in reverence and a belief in the profound impact these figures had and should continue to have.
Which leaves us with a thought to consider. If figures like Rama, revered across millennia, embodying these incredible ideals, are viewed as simply ordinary men, what does that say about how we understand human potential itself? Or the values passed down to us?
It's a big question. What might we actually gain, or perhaps lose, by reevaluating the traditional understanding of these Mahapurushas and their enduring influence? Something to definitely reflect on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.